Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So the other day I got to do something a little bit different, and I had an interview with someone all about mental illnesses. So this is a person who has his own struggles and challenges of getting out and about, especially post-lockdown, being able to sort of leave home and get out there. So he also provides some really great advice. I've had the absolute pleasure of being able to do this with him, and really thank him a lot for this interview. So he doesn't want to be shown on camera, which is fine. So there's no video to watch, but we hope you can just sit back and listen to it all. And again, just want to thank him so much, and I really hope that you find this useful. So please do give it a thumbs up, do share it around, and I'll put in the interview right now.
Hello, this is an interview that I've decided to do that is important, I think, for a couple of reasons, but it's all surrounding mental health, what it means, how it makes you feel, and how you go about combating it, and what steps you take to combat how you feel. So I thought it was important because it's something that some people don't like to talk about. It's something that some people find it very difficult to listen to, and I just think it's more important to hear it from someone that has personal experiences with it, like I do, rather than just hearing it from somebody that is guessing and playing guessing games and not really 100% sure what they're talking about. It might sometimes be better to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. So that's why I decided to agree to this interview. So I think with a big day trip, the one thing that does crop up is you don't really know until you get there, or in your travel, how many people you're going to come face to face with, how busy it's going to be, what those people are like. Because in some degree, you get people that, you know, especially in the times that we've been going through, people are very often not wanting to come near you. So it's always a good thing to have that social distancing in place, so you don't need to worry about bumping into people or places being overly crowded. So I suppose that's one challenge that I used to face going out, and I probably will as things improve. But I think at the moment the biggest challenge is being able to maintain a good relationship with somebody and a good friendship with somebody when you're not entirely sure how it's going to go. One of the challenges is obviously not being able to go out for a long time, going from being sat at home for days on end to all of a sudden having the world open up again. You don't really know how people are going to have changed, both in terms of their mentality and their physical attributes, like how they react to certain situations themselves. So I think that's a big challenge on my part, because you don't really know what you're going to be facing. If you, for example, planned a day out and you knew where you were going and what you were doing back in when times were a bit more normal, you can almost plan your day around people. Like you can say, oh, we'll go out at such a time to avoid crowds in this place, or we'll meet for lunch here, but we'll meet at, say, 1 o'clock rather than 12 o'clock when everybody will be going for their lunch. So you can plan sort of a day out. But challenges these days, especially with public transport, is there's only so many seats. And if you get on a train that's busy, people they seem to forget that social distancing exists. And so you might be sitting there in your own little bubble, in your own little world, enjoying the view out the window, and then all of a sudden you get a stranger come and sit next to you. It could be pretty difficult. It might be pretty difficult to get your head around it, having not really been connecting with anyone for the last 18 months, year and a half, whatever. It's going to be difficult to get back into that balance of being able to control your emotions and deal with getting back out into the world again. It's a very confusing place to be. And I think especially with train travel, it's one of the most popular forms of travel, especially in the UK. There's something about it which obviously it's not the cheapest, but yet it's so convenient that it's so easy for everybody to use. And of course, it's that point where you just feel like, what if it is busy? What would I do if people did sit all around me? What would I do if it was crowded? And those are challenges that you need to learn to face when going out into public areas, and especially on public transport. You don't want to be fearful of going out. You can't, or you shouldn't be turning down chances to go out. We've been in and trapped for so long. The chance to go out, it's a great thing. And so I think regardless of what challenges you may face, you should still give it a go. And if you can't do it, then that's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be annoyed at yourself for. You've still given it a go, and that's a huge step. And I think regardless of the challenges that you're going to face, whenever you choose to face them, the challenges are still going to be there. So it's always better to give it a go as soon as you can, and as soon as you feel safe and comfortable to do so, rather than leaving it, because then the challenges will still be there, more people will be going out, and you're really making it worse for yourself. And that's what I've learned so far. I've decided to just jump in and go for it, and so far I think it's been pretty successful. I've not had any real trouble so far, which is great. And yeah, everything seems to be fairly easy. And I guess my message is, don't feel like you need to worry about every little thing. You know, sometimes things will be easier than you think they will be. Sometimes there'll be challenges, but you can get over that. People can get over that eventually. And whether it takes you one time to do it, whether it takes you 5 times, or whether it takes you 100 times, the fact is, every time you go out and try and face these challenges, even if you don't succeed straight away, you're still giving it a go. So every time you're doing it, you're getting that little bit more confident. Even though you may not feel it straight away, there's always that one part of your mind that just goes, yeah, I did that. I was close to doing that. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that anyone who suffers with any sort of depression or anxiety needs to realise, is that you might not feel better straight away. You might not achieve what you want to achieve straight away. But every little thing that you do in a positive light, or every positive step you try and take, is a positive step in the right direction. So how I go about planning a day out, it's difficult because it all depends on where you're going and what you're doing. So if your day out revolves around travelling a long way, then the easiest thing to do would be to prepare maybe the day before. So you want to have something that will take your mind off of what you're doing. So if you're travelling, for example, on a train, then you might want to take a book with you, or you might want to have a Spotify playlist or any sort of music playlist ready for when you're sat on the train. It might seem a bit of a cliche, but music does take away a lot of fear, and it does take away a lot of emotions that you may be feeling. And I know from my personal experiences, listening to a bit of heavier sort of rock music or punk rock music, it kind of clears your mind, and you can listen to that and really just kind of allow the music and the storytelling in the lyrics and in what you're listening to sort of take you out of that situation that you're in. As I said in a previous question, I think there are definitely challenges that people will face, and they might not be able to look at a day out and say, I can do this straight away. But the more that they are able to plan, the easier it will become. So it's not like just stepping out into the world after not being allowed out with no helping hands at all. The more you can sort of get your mind ready and have your mind set on something that you can do to combat how you feel, that I think helps with planning. You can plan day trips out, and you can have in your mind something that you will do. That, just for example, if you're an hour into your journey and all of a sudden you start feeling anxious, you can have a plan in place. So you can say, if I feel anxious, I can listen to this, or I can do this, or I can read this, for example. And I think that's one of the most important things to have in your arsenal, is something that will take your mind away from the situation. Another thing about planning a trip is deciding who you're going to go with, or who's going to be at the other end of your journey to meet with you. I wouldn't advise, personally, going out, if you're at all anxious, I wouldn't personally advise going out alone or meeting up with nobody and spending the whole day alone. After almost 18 months of not going out, I would say it's very important to have somebody there as sort of like an anchor. So if you're not feeling great when you arrive, they can at least help you out, and you know you've got someone at the other end of the trip that will be there for you. So I would say personally that having someone to go on this trip with helps in a huge way, because if you're feeling anxious on the train, even if they're meeting you at the other end, if you're feeling anxious when you're on your journey, then you can call them, you can have that conversation with them and explain to them how you feel, and maybe they in turn will have their own ideas of what you can do to combat how you're feeling. But what people need to remember is that we're all sort of coming out of this bubble that we've been in into this new world together. We're all in the same boat at the moment. Obviously, people who are suffering with mental health, they are really struggling at the moment with getting back out again. And I just think going out and having something to do or something to look forward to, it's great. It's a great deal of fun. It certainly helps break up the nerves. I happen to know of a couple of people that have been going out and experiencing this new world, and I know they've been full of nerves, and it hasn't stopped them, which is great. And they've managed to link up well together and to help each other out and to kind of talk each other down when they're feeling very, very anxious. So I would say those are my top two, and I think very important 2 points in how to plan a day, but also how to plan it around your own personal issues. Obviously, whatever anyone has in terms of mental health, it will differ per person, because no two people are the same when it comes to their mental health. But for me personally, like I say, I have a Spotify playlist or a music playlist that I will listen to, and I will happily just sit back and let the world go by and just let the music help. And that for me has always been what I've done, even before I really got to grips with how my mental health affected me and what it did. I always had music next to me to kind of help me through when I felt difficult. And as I said before, my second point would be having someone there with you or at the end of your journey to hang out with, so you know that you're not going to be facing all of these challenges alone. And even if that other person is just as nervous, there's a good chance that if you're together, you can conquer it a lot better together than you could alone. So I think what's important in this whole interview process and the things that we've talked about, I think it's important that people need to know how to deal with people close to them in terms of their mental health. Because what's important to know is that, as I said previously, not every mental health issue is the same. And I just think that nobody really knows much about it, because it's almost been hidden away behind a lot of physical problems. And you often find that it's much more difficult to get the help that someone needs, and it's a lot more difficult to speak out about mental health. And although that is changing slowly, it does still come as a bit of a challenge to some people. And I just think that we need to kind of come up with a scheme or a situation where we can get younger people learning about mental health. We can get even older generations or younger adults. Everyone needs some way of learning about mental health and how to deal with it, especially with close relatives or friends or whatever. People need to know exactly what they're doing or how to deal with someone in a situation where they may be very uncomfortable. Because it's useless if you're if you're a very hyperactive person in general and you're very upbeat and you're very happy and jolly all the time, that in itself is great. But if someone is suffering from an anxiety attack or a panic attack, the last thing that they want is you being very happy and jolly and jumpy all around them. They want someone who can sit down with them and talk to them, or give them a bit of helpful advice or a helping hand, not jumping around going, oh, cheer up, everything's going to be okay. And I think that's sort of stigma we need to stop around the idea of depression, especially, is that people can't exactly talk about it without there being some sort of replies that just don't help. You'll find out that if you ever suffer from mental health, when you talk to some people about it, you'll get an answer reminiscent of, oh, well, snap out of it, or, oh, don't worry, you'll be all right. And as much as people think that they're helping, they aren't. And they're being counterintuitive. They're not helping at all. And I think that's pretty that's a pretty serious problem when we're dealing with it's almost like a lot of different mental health illnesses keep coming up. The more people suffer, the more research into mental health can be done, and not only will we find out more and more about mental health problems and why they happen, but we'll be able to find out more and more of how to stop them happening or how to help those people who suffer from them. And I just think sometimes we do have these problems where people don't know or maybe don't fully understand how to deal with such problems. And especially with a close friend or relative, sometimes you don't want to talk about it. Sometimes, for example, if a mother and daughter were talking and the daughter came out and said she was feeling depressed, the mother just instinctively might not want to discuss it. It might be too painful for her to realise that her own daughter is in this place. And I just think that's sad, because parents should be able to speak to their kids about however they feel. And I just feel like there's not much help out there in terms of people learning how to deal with it. Admittedly, with mental health, at least for a lot of it now, you're getting more and more therapies available for people. So the more they struggle or the more they feel is wrong with them, the more options there are to them to go out and get that help professionally, which is obviously a great thing. It's gone from, even when I was growing up, there wasn't nearly as much in terms of mental health help than there is right now in today's world. And I think that's a great improvement for us. I think that's a great improvement for anyone that suffers from mental health. It's great to know that, yes, they might be feeling awful, but there are so many options open and available to them that they can go and get help. And it's the help that they so dearly need. And they don't have to rely on just trying to break down the walls of other people who might not understand or want to talk about it. They can get help from places that are there for that specific reason. And I think it's just as important talking about having friends that are there for you. Sometimes a friend will say, "Oh, I'll be there for you through anything." And that's lovely to hear, but you kind of sometimes get the feeling when you're in a very low point, when you're having a very low day, and you say to one of your closest friends, "I'm feeling really bad today. My mental health is really bringing me down. I'm feeling very depressed." You sometimes find that those friends don't entirely know what to say because they simply don't have the knowledge of what you're going through, or they don't know how to go about helping you. They feel like whatever they say isn't going to be helpful. And I think that's a huge part of what needs to be changed as well. We need to have a way of people learning how to help their closest friends and family deal with whatever it is they're going through. And sometimes, as much of a cliche as it may be, sometimes we do just need an arm around our shoulder and to be told it will be okay. But when it's more than that, sometimes people just don't know what to say. And I think that that's what people need to maybe learn as they go through the school system or college or university. There should be some form of learning about how to deal with your closest friends' problems and mental health, especially when it comes to depression. Because the more young people especially in the UK that are coming forward and saying they're suffering with their mental health, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be the fact that you have thousands of people living in fear of their mental health because they don't know who to turn to or they don't know what to do. They should have these options available to them through their closest friends, and they shouldn't feel like they're going to be laughed at or bullied for how they feel. And I just feel something like that will be hugely beneficial for everyone, not just young people, but adults, older people, even retired people. It doesn't matter. There should be help out there for everyone in many different forms, including through friends and family as well as professionally, if that's what they want to do. But I just feel like the more we feel we are learning through or about mental health as a whole, the more we'll eventually be able to help more and more people, and hopefully the learning and the systems through schools and a school syllabus will be able to be put forward for helping those who need help in school, rather than just those that have gone through college and university and are now in a workplace. Because sometimes it does feel that the only help available is for adults, when really what we should be looking at is getting help for the younger generations that are suffering in silence, and that then will have a negative effect on how they grow up, maybe feeling like they were never listened to as a child, or they were never listened to as they were growing up. They might become an adult who just doesn't trust the help. And I think that's important, to really nip those problems in the bud when we can, rather than letting people suffer. And I think that's one thing, or well, one of many things that we need to do to really help the younger generation, and also, as I said, all other generations. We need to find help, and we need to be able to talk about it with anyone and everyone that is close to us, that we feel like we can trust and open up to, and also professionally as well. So whatever help that anyone can get, and if you're suffering listening to this and you're in need of help, please get it. There are ways that you can get help, however old you are. It might not seem it, but if you're in school, if you're listening to this and you're in school, go and talk to someone. Go and talk to a teacher or a lecturer or a professor, whatever you call them. Just go and get help, because it is there. And if you're an adult listening to this and you've got problems, or you're depressed, or whatever the issues are, help is there. And I'm proof that it isn't always as bad as you may feel it is. There is help out there for you. Things are there to help improve your way of life, improve how you think, and overall, there are people that will listen, and there are amazing companies with brilliant professional therapists that will sit and listen to you, whether it's just needing to contact someone one night because you feel like you're really struggling, or whether it's a full 10 or 12 week course of therapy that you feel you may need, or anything in between. Just remember that there is always someone there that will help you. Please don't ever try and fight alone, because it doesn't work. Fighting alone isn't ever good. So if you ever need the help, get it, because it makes a huge difference. Even though at the beginning you might not think it will, you might not think it's for you, but give it a go, because you never know what could come out of it. So there was just, I was given an opportunity at the end of this interview to give a couple of shout outs to some people that I personally would like to thank for being there for me. And it goes without saying that everyone in my family who knows what I've been going through and knows all about mental health, it's appreciated that anyone's listened, and anyone that's helped, and everyone that's helped. It will never go unnoticed. It's very much appreciated to have that helping hand. So everyone in my family that knows about me and what I've been going through, thank you for being there. Thank you for being awesome and helping me through some pretty rough patches. I also wanted to thank a couple of friends, if that's all right with them, which I know it is. So in no particular order at all. So if you're last in this, don't think that you're not as important as the first person, because you all are. I'd like to thank a couple of people. So firstly, my international friends. I would like to say you're there for me when it's 4:00 in the morning, I can't sleep, and I'm depressed and I feel awful. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Jen and to Lauren, two absolutely genuine legends that I could never have been without. Both lovely, lovely people, and people that I'm proud to call my friends. I'd secondly like to shout out a couple of people that are a bit closer. So I have a great deal of friends on Facebook, but a couple in particular have been lovely. So I would just like to give a huge shout out to Lydia up in Scotland, who has been there for me for years now, who's helped me out of a lot of really crappy spots and a lot of really tough times. I've spoken to her and confided in her when I needed it. But yeah, she's always been there for me. I'd also like to say a shout out to two very, very special people in my life. I would just like to say that without these two people, I don't really think that I'd be the person that I am today, in terms of being there as friends. And firstly, I'd like to say a huge thank you for being there for me and for keeping me afloat in the last few months at points. The owner of this channel, that would be Alice. Thank you to her for letting me do this interview. Thank you for allowing me to speak out about a cause that means the world to me and many, many other people. And I would just like to say that it means a lot. It really does mean a lot. And finally, at least on the Facebook front, before I thank one or two more people, I would just like to say a huge thank you to Pia. She's been there for me for the last 3 or 4 years, and she often is there just to listen to me rant, listen to me get annoyed, and she's always there to help me get on and get past whatever it is I'm dealing with. And for that, I couldn't be more thankful. So thank you for everything. Really, it's so very much appreciated, and it'll never be forgotten. And I hope you know that for all of the people that I've mentioned, but for Pia as well, I'm always there for you guys too, and that's never going to change. And one more person, a close friend of mine that I've confided in a couple of times over on my Twitter, a friend of mine called Lola. She's always been there for me. She's always listened. She's always been there as almost like a bit more of a distant friend than anything, but that's fine. And we've always chatted, and she's always brought me down to earth when I've been feeling a bit rubbish and a bit trashy. So thank you to her for being there for me. Thank you to everyone that I've listed above. You're all amazing, and you're all fantastic people, and I hope that you have nothing but the best from here on out. And just remember that you've always been there for me, and I'll always be there for you. So I hope this interview has helped. I hope this interview has been a sort of been helpful in many other ways, not just as a story of what I've been through a little bit, but also helps you realise that you are all special. Everyone that is listening to this, whether you're a friend of mine or a stranger, you're all special. So never be afraid to reach out. Never be afraid to ask for help. And it just goes to show that your closest friends can always be there for you whenever you need them. And as can your family. So confide in them if you need to, because there are true, beautiful and amazing, legendary people all around.